I'm Ray, and Jenny's behind me. Go ahead and say hi.
Hello, everyone.
And William and Andy are here with us. So, hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard me. Hi.
So, William brought up something very cool, and he heard on a podcast. It was the Doomsday Gamer, right?
I think it's 5 games for Doomsday. Yeah.
And
5G4D or something like that. Yeah.
I choose not to go to the Doomsday, and we talked about it, and we figured what we were actually thinking of was this one. You're going out to the it's recording weird here. I'll move you guys down here for a second. If we're going out to the Alaska bush for 1 year, limited space, and you can only bring 5 games, and expansions for as compact as we could. Don't. That's why Imperial Assault's not on mine, because that would take up a significant amount of space. What would we do? Because I'm thinking less Doomsday. We've had enough of that lately, and moving more towards something that could happen to each of us. And we each had a list of 5 games. And what I'll do is we got some crossover. So I'm going to talk about all of them. Just real quick, run through them. For example, here's mine. I've got Legendary, Marvel. I'm using the Phase 1 box. You can see it down here. Adventure Tactics. That's a new game, but I'm really enjoying it. Really unique character progression, and it's a campaign. Tiny Epic Dinosaurs, because it's tiny, it's epic, and it's got dinosaurs. Hokkaido, and that Elder Dragon Lair deck box actually has a base game and an expansion for a game called Guildhall. So those are my picks. Now we're going to go to Jennie and go from there.
Okay, so I have Carcassonne big box, but we have it in one Plano box, so it's actually not that much space, and we can get all the expansions in. Pandemic, I put Season 0 because we haven't played it yet, but a Pandemic Legacy. I want a game that you can go through and play a lot of. Dominion, and we have several expansions in a double card box, and I would make sure one of the bases are in there, and then any expansions I could fit. And then Rococo, and then Catan Dice, because that was my I'm going to try to be small thing, so.
All right, and I think you're coming through on my mic still. I can't mute it with the other things, so I'll figure out something here as we go. As Andy hits his list.
Right, and so for my list here, what I ended up picking was Betrayal at House on the Hill with the expansion, because the expansion, the way that it's designed, and the core game all fit into one box. Elder Sign with at least one expansion. Elder Sign's kind of like I saw someone on Facebook describe it as Cthulhu Yahtzee. That's about the best description of it I can think of. And it has a lot of expansions. I think there's 5 expansions, but most of the expansions just add more cards to it. And it's a very small, compact game with a lot of replayability. It can go for a pretty significant amount of time. I picked Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I picked Season 1 because we haven't played 0 yet, so I don't know how good that is. I'm sure it's okay. I did not think 2 was as fun as Season 1. I thought Season 1 had better twists and turns to it. And it's just a great game that can last for a long period of time. You can play that tons. Sequence, fantastic little game. The Jumbo Edition is the one that I recommend just because it's more fun when you can roll out that big vinyl mat. It's a game where you play in 2 pairs, so you need 4 people for it. And it's kind of and you can't communicate with your partner. So it's a fun game. And because it's just cards, it's got just an incredible amount of replayability to it. And then Icecool, because, you know, it's very different than anything else. And sometimes you just want a little variety. And, you know, I'm a sucker for dexterity games.
Excellent. And now Williams.
Okay, so I think in mine we have a bit of we have one overlap, right, with Andy's, right? That I also have Betrayal there. You know, I'm not seeing my list show up, right?
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm seeing my list.
Because I don't remember which order they're in. I think I kind of remember which ones I chose though.
Well, and if you're like me, you changed it 15 times, so you have no idea what is on your list, what you actually ended with.
Okay, I'm gonna the programs seem to be messing with each other, so I'm gonna stop this one,
That's cool.
and we're gonna keep just going with the backup Zoom. Hey, look, it appeared,
Yay.
and we are still recording.
Okay.
So, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got Betrayal there for the same reasons that Andy said. You know, you can fit the expansion. The only one that I have is the Widow's Walk. I think you gave it to me as a present, Andy, yeah. Because it all
Yeah,
fits in the same box. And I got also 4-player chess there, which I actually don't own. I think I still have the Butte Elementary copy here with me. But yeah, it's great because you can also play normal chess on 4-player chess because it's got the 8x8 inside there, so you can just ignore the extra bits and you can play normal chess on it. And I got Hive Pocket because it's tiny as well. It's I think I talked about Hive Pocket on my top 20. Can't remember now. And I got Tichu as well because it's just a deck of cards. It's a 56 card deck. It has your usual 52 cards plus some 4 extra ones, so it's the same size as decks of cards. But then, you know, where I saved space on these other ones, you know, I went big on Scythe with all the expansions. But then I'm gonna have to get the legendary box where you can fit everything and it all fits into just one box somehow. And yeah. So and I try to, you know, get Hive and Tichu to be like small, and then use Scythe for whatever I had left.
So we had some crossover. Jennie had or between Andy and Jennie with the pandemic season of your choice, and Andy and William with Betrayal. I am the odd man out that picked a bunch of weird stuff that doesn't actually seem to match anything. But why these? You know, what really drew us to these different ones? I mean, it looks, and we're also assuming you're going to take 5, you know, several sets of dice and a regular deck of cards because they take no space and you can do a bazillion games with them. But why these? Andy, you want to start since you're kind of first on my list? What really drew you to these?
Well, of course, if I assumed that we would have, you know, cribbage, for example, and backgammon, you know, those are very small and very typical things to bring. And my wife and I have very small, compact sets of those. Of course, you know, new deck cards with cribbage, you can use all sorts of stuff. Betrayal, because it has, with the expansion, how many scenarios is it, William? Do you remember? It's over 100?
I think it's 100, exactly 100.
100 exactly. That's right. 50 in the core game and 50 extra ones. And so Betrayal at the House on the Hill has a very similar early game, and then it shifts at mid game, and then it shifts randomly. Very rarely have I had the same combination of relics and rooms come up where you get the exact same haunting. And so I found that almost every game I've played of Betrayal at House on the Hill has been different. And they're wildly different because they're all based on old horror films, basically, and new horror films. So they're all horror film archetypes. So you could be fighting the Blob. And we've had times where we've been fighting against one person who's the traitor. And that's kind of a fun mechanic because it randomizes that traitor mechanic. And then also there are times where, like, I remember one time we ended up in Baba Yaga's house and it took off and flew away, and then we had to fight each other to see who could get parachutes because there weren't enough parachutes for everybody in the house. So it's just a very, very different every time. Elder Sign, just because it's the replayability of it is it goes forever and forever and forever. If you like Yahtzee and you like combination games, it's good. It's kind of a Yahtzee combined with a campaign, because there still is an end goal. There is a way that you win the game, as opposed to Yahtzee where just one person wins. And so Elder Sign is a good cooperative game, which I really enjoy. Pandemic Legacy, I think, is just a very long scale game. That one was really big. I almost didn't put in Pandemic Legacy to put in a more traditional type game like Dutch Blitz, more of a card game that you would do forever and ever. But I thought Pandemic Legacy is fun because there's a narrative, and it really is an experience that you have with your friends. And that's one thing that I lived out in the bush for 5 years, and one of the things that I know that was important to me out there was developing a group of friends that we played games with, and so that having good games to play and having a good game group to play is one of those things that gets you through long, cold winters in Alaska, and I think when you have limited space, that was the only thing that made me hesitant on Pandemic Legacy. Sequence, Jumbo Edition is the one I prefer. It doesn't really matter which one you use. It's the same game. It's a fun game to play, especially if you have two couples. Because then you sit kitty corner on the table, and the other team is holding your team accountable for following the communication rules, which are restricted. It doesn't play the same ever twice, like it plays differently every time. But the Jumbo Edition is just a nicer, larger board, so all of the cards fit more neatly on the board, and it has bigger, nicer, like, poker chips that you use to mark where your team is on its scoring progression, and trying to get the pattern you need to win. And it's just a really fun, I think, overlooked game, because it's only a 4-player game, and I know in the small village it was hard to get a large group of people together to game, so 4 was often an ideal number. Icecool, because it's just such a different game, and it plays. I almost went with Carom instead of Icecool, but Carom's such a huge board. That's why I didn't go with Carom, because you have to have that, or the Carom Crokinole board.
Yep.
Is a good 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot wooden square that doesn't break down. So it was just large, whereas Icecool is just a regular board game size box, and then all of the boxes nest within each other, and you put the boxes together, and you've built this kind of a 3D series of hallways and doors. And the dexterity part of it is really fun and adds a lot of variety. I brought that out to game nights, and I brought a bag of games where I brought 15 games with me to go play. And we started out with Icecool just because it was different, and people were like, "What's that?" And then we ended up playing Icecool all night long for like 5 hours, and don't play anything else. And as long as you have enough people who are interested in playing it. And Icecool also, the thing about these games too, like Sequence and Icecool particularly, are games that you can play with older kids. I know, at least for me now, with having kids, I think if we looked at this through the lens of having kids, my list would be a little bit different, because the Betrayal at House on the Hill, Elder Sign, and Pandemic Legacy are really more targeted towards older folks. Elder Sign is something that kids could play, but really for Pandemic Legacy and some of the complexities of it, I think it'd be too tough for kids. And Betrayal at House on the Hill has, I don't know, I think kids could get it once they figured it out. None of these are super complicated. None of these are super crunchy.
Yep.
So I think these are games that are crunchy and niche enough that I enjoy them as a board gamer, but they're accessible enough I can play them with about anybody. Pretty much all of these. And the only one that's a little bit different is Pandemic Legacy, but that one you have to have a dedicated group to really make it work anyway. So those are my rationale for those games.
Yep.
But also I'm assuming I would play cribbage and backgammon more than I would play any of these games.
So I have a question
ahead.
for Andy.
Mm-hmm.
So in the podcast, the 5 Games for Doomsday, the host always asks this question, which is, well, in that scenario, you're like trying to escape the zombies or something like that with your family in a car, and then the back of the car opens and a bunch of games fly out and only one remains.
Mm-hmm.
If that happened, which game would you hope is still there? Maybe you're flying to the bush on a plane and somehow, I don't know, there's some turbulence or something like that and the plane crashes and a bunch of games fly out and only one game is still left there. Which one would you hope is the one that's still left?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, man.
I mean, for me, it's either Sequence or Icecool. I think I probably would go with Sequence over Icecool because Sequence is more of a traditional kind of infinite replayability type of game. You know, there's certainly paths to victory, but I think Sequence, there's also the element of luck. Whereas Icecool is a game where if you play Icecool enough and figure out the physics of how to make those little things move exactly where you want to, and you have one person in your group that's better than everybody else, probably Icecool is a lot less fun. Whereas Sequence is never going to get less fun. Sequence is always going to be Sequence. So I think Sequence would be what I would go with there. Although I don't know, Elder Sign's a lot smaller than Sequence, so Elder Sign fits a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really tough question because I mean, just going to 5.
Yeah.
It's a vicious culling of my game collection. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, a little bit different question. Since you were talking about kids and younger kids, we have the Scooby-Doo version of Betrayal. So it's a little bit more accessible for the kids if you were talking younger ones. But
I thought about that one. I also thought about the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, the D&D one. And the reason I didn't go with them is neither of them has 100 scenarios. There's just not as much replayability. And if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do, you want options. So having more choices seems good to me. I mean, I don't know. We had a summer where we played that almost every Friday night, Ray, for 3 months.
We did.
And it was never the same. Like, I mean, the buildup was always the same, but from the midway point on, it never was the same. And we didn't even play through, well, we probably played through a quarter of the 100 scenarios, maybe.
If that, yeah.
Yeah, 15, 20 plays, maybe. Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think that it's important if you're talking somewhere you're going to be stuck for a year. Like one of the reasons I also picked Pandemic Legacy, though, is I think I want an experience. I want something that I'm going to be doing, with either my family or other people who live in there. And I was kind of going with the thought that there wouldn't be many other people around. It would just be like small group of who's ever in that house. And so it's different if you went to one of the villages, maybe, but even that you wouldn't have very many people interested. So I wanted something that would have replayability, but also that, okay, I can get into this big experience that normally I wouldn't maybe have time for, but I'm trying to look at it as a plus.
Yeah, I think that's a good lens to look at it with, Jenny. And that's like I said, that just the accessibility of all of the different games. That was definitely one of the metrics I used looking at my collection, was which games are accessible to people. There are games I love more than these games, but I don't think I would get just your average person to play them with me. Whereas these games, I think a lot of people would play.
Yep. I didn't think of Icecool. So that one, when you put that on there, it's like, maybe I should look for a dexterity game, but I pulled back. I didn't steal your idea.
I always think of Icecool, Ray. Always. It's a problem.
No, I don't think it's a problem. All right, William.
Alrighty. So
what? And we're going to ask your question back because that was hateful. That was just painful to think about. That's...
Yeah, man. Okay, so Hive Pocket Edition, it's always in my car, basically, because it's tiny and you can play it anywhere, right? So we just gotta take it. I didn't even have to think. It's going to be there, And yeah, because I think like I said before, right? It's a perfect information game, very much like chess, which is super tiny and compact and neat, right? And has a lot of depth to it. So that's definitely going. Tichu, kind of for the same reasons, right? Because it's so Tichu is kind of like Bridge in a bit, that it's a 4-player game that you play in teams, but unlike Bridge, the scoring system is very simple, whereas the scoring system in Bridge is just insane. At one point I was like, no, let's learn how to play Bridge, let's learn how to play these classics. Then I learned how to play the game, right? But then the scoring afterwards, I'm like, oh man, no way. And so Tichu kind of fixes that. It's a trick-taking game that you play in pairs, and there's a lot of bluffing, and there's a lot of bidding as well, and people really get addicted to it. You can play it over and over and over and over again, which is why when you buy it, you get like 2 decks. One of the reasons people go through a deck, very, very quickly. 4-player chess, it's a lot of getting a lot of value for your volume there, because you get not only 4-player chess, but you also get 2-player chess inside the board there. And 4-player chess is just a lot of fun, and it's educational as well for the kids. They can learn a bit about chess as well. And there's lots of different ways to play it. I've played it where everyone is just on their own, and you get points by capturing other people's pieces. If you get checkmated, you're out of the game, right? And you just have that fixed number of points there. But there is another way of playing it, which is again in teams. You can play in a team where the person across from you is on the same team as you, and first team to get checkmated loses. And that is much more interesting. Yeah, I found, because it's a bit more controlled. It's not like crazy, And another reason for taking chess is because it's a game that you can study. There are books on it and everything. Is that one thing that I got into as well is chess with different pieces. These are the so-called like fairy pieces as well. Like there was a famous American champion who came up with 2 different pieces to play chess with. So I thought, even if I get tired of chess, I can carve out new pieces and start playing chess with different pieces. So I've got here the hawk and the elephant. I don't know if you guys can see. Where the hawk is a mixture of a knight and a bishop, and the elephant is a mixture of a knight and a rook. And so, you can just there's an additional pastime, which is making new chess pieces for your chessboard, because you're there. Maybe make them out of ivory. I don't know. Betrayal at House on the Hill for same reasons that Andy said. It's just like a fantastic game, so much replayability, and yeah, it's just always a fun experience, right? Now Scythe with all the expansions, right? So okay, now this is the big game experience that I'm bringing, right? So it's gonna have not just the usual expansions with a lot of additional factions and stuff like that, but there is a campaign in the last expansion of Scythe, which is the Rise of Fenris campaign. And so you play it like a campaign, but it's not a legacy campaign, so you don't alter the board. So you can play the campaign over and over, and certain things which you unlock in the campaign, you can actually just add them to a normal game, like a module. So it's adding even more replayability to the base game. And there is one module that we've played half of the campaign. We haven't finished it. There's one module there that I always want to play with. I always want to play with that module because it's so good, And so I think when Tom Vassell reviewed Rise of Fenris, he said that it was his favorite campaign. So it's pretty well regarded. And so, like I said, it's for the same reason that you guys brought Pandemic Legacy.
Yeah.
I would bring Scythe with the Rise of Fenris campaign, and it all fits into one big box, and you cram it all in there and everything. And because it just has so many expansions to it, you know, that it's so good. There is, well, I can't talk about the expansions because it's spoilers, right? But that's basically it. And I think if only one of those survived, I think you
Yep.
guys already know what my answer will be.
Well, Tichu. You're going to
It's-
save the
no,
Tichu.
it's-
No.
It's
Scythe.
got to be Scythe. Yeah.
Scythe, yeah. Because Tichu, I can like get a deck of cards, and then maybe, I don't know, I need 2 deck of cards. Maybe I don't know how I'll do it. I'd have to buy 2 decks to have the 52, and then get another deck, and then maybe alter some of the cards to be the 4 extra cards that you have, which are the dragon, the phoenix, the sparrow, and the dog. You know, they're all animals. And so yeah.
I was
think-
really surprised to not see Catan on your list, William.
So here's the thing. Do I have internet in the bush? Sorry to like seem super ignorant.
No.
Yeah,
that's-
dial up. I mean, you have internet. It's just not fast. Like, so if you were to try to play an online game like Call of Duty, it would, or Destiny, it would not work.
I
If
see.
you were to play like a turn-taking, game like Catan, that might work just fine.
So I think in my mind, I would be playing Catan on the internet, right?
Mhm.
I've featured like a few cooperative games here, right? Because that's my jam now, kind of. I want like games where I play in a team, where I get to play with someone else, where I get to help out someone else. So all of those, except maybe Hive and Scythe, Tichu is a cooperative game. You play in a team. 4-player chess, you can play in a team. And Betrayal, unless you're the traitor, right? You're all together, And so I've kind of like separated these 2 things in my life. There's the super competitive, I just want to win side, and there's the kind of like, let's have fun side. And I prefer like cooperative games for that. So that's why Catan got kind of left out, because I don't know. I don't want to be playing that with my family,
I'm gonna get stabbed by a child. So
Yeah.
See,
Cut me off. Ah.
I'm all for the Catan with the family. I'm not as big on the Catan with hyper competitive. But Jennie and I both talked about that ahead of time. It's like, if we can get an app for it, we're probably not going to want to bring it.
Right.
They, and there's a lot of apps that we've got.
yeah, that's why Patchwork didn't make my list. Patchwork's a fantastic 2-player game, but the Patchwork app is just as good. I mean, it's literally it's identical.
Well, and as long as the app doesn't need continuous internet, that was my thought, was because, like, for instance, we were at the cabin in Talkeetna, and obviously you're not really connected on your thing, but we were playing Castles of Mad King Ludwig after
Mhm.
everyone went to bed because we have the app already downloaded. So my thought is, you download all your apps and you're good. And you do have internet, as you said. It's just internet's much spottier than people realize when you're in these situations. So I did also factor in that, okay, I would have this on the app. I wouldn't be playing it online, but I'd have the app and we could do pass and play or play by yourself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of that, because now that you mention it, I think you can. Well, I've done this with Brooke, that we played Tichu against the computer with each one of us on a different phone, because the phone's connected through Bluetooth. So we were paired, we were playing as a team, and then that we're against 2 bots, which were playing together, right? So I don't know if you can do it with 4 people. Can you get like a 4-way Bluetooth connection on phones to get like 4 phones connected? Because then you can all play Tichu just on your phone, which I think would be awful, but you could still do it. Like why do this, right? Let's all get together for a Bluetooth connection around the table and just play it on our phone, right? Where you could take a deck of cards, right? But technically you could still do it. I don't know.
All right, that's a good point. I didn't think about that for Tichu. Jen, you want to fill us in?
Yeah, can you bring up my list, hon? Sorry, so work has interrupted me somewhat because stuff is crashing. Talking about internet screw-ups, that's my work right now. But anyways, okay, so my first choice, and I went through like 15 choices, but I stuck with Carcassonne because we have Carcassonne. We have the big box, but we have it down to a Plano box, so easy to take. And with all the different expansions, you have lots of options. And we did try to steer away from 2-player only games. I also did feel like I was cheating, and there's nothing on my list that's on Ray's because, well, I would have that too, right? Because I'm not going the bush without him. So, but I picked Carcassonne because I could fit it all in one small thing, and it has a lot of replayability with all the different things, and I don't ever get sick of playing Carcassonne. Pandemic Legacy we already really talked about, but same thing. I wanted some sort of experience game. Figured, I was looking at it, the plus of that I'll have time to play this. And then Dominion. So again, looking at replayability, I was like, well, there are so many combinations to Dominion. And when we moved, we actually already took about 5 of our expansions and put them in one big if you've ever played Magic, you've seen the Dex box I'm talking about, the double row of Dex box. And so my thought would be that I would fit one of the bases in there, even if I had to take out one of the expansions I already had in that box. And one base and as many expansions I could fit in would go, and I would have infinite combinations, really. I mean, it's not infinite. I could work out the math, but no one wants to hear that. So, except maybe William, he might want to hear the math. But I could come up with all these different ones, so I might as well, I've got so many different ways, never get sick of it because there's always a new game because you have a new set of 10 cards. It's also pretty easy to teach, and a wide variety of people can play it. The same with Carcassonne. Like Carcassonne, our kids can play. Now, I wanted a worker placement, and I went through a bunch, but I settled on Rococo because I wanted something a little bit heavier. I wanted something that I felt had some meat to it, and that, I could really get into playing, and I wouldn't get tired of playing. And then I decided I need to save some space, and so Catan Dice. But again, I really like Catan, and I do have an app for Catan on my thing, but I really like the dice version. It's easy. We actually keep a copy of this at our cabin already, and we do it because it's easy, and it's a roll and write. But it still gives you that same feel of playing Catan, but in almost no space. And I usually have 3 copies of this in our house at any given time because I send 2 boxes overseas every month, and I include a board game in it, but I always have to do a small one. And this is one I'm always throwing in there because everyone, I think you're trying to get a game that you think other people will play with you. Most people know Catan, or at least already have heard of it. And so it's an easy one, easily accessible. Our kids play this, we play this. And again, I think a wide group of people would play it. So I thought, well, okay, rather than take one of the big boxes of Catan, I'd play the dice game and I'd be able to get the same feel. And there's 2 maps that come with this, but I think you could easily, do little changes, and you could add a lot of variability to this as you go. But you already have 2 maps that just come in the base one, and it would be easy enough to, you don't even need all the things. You could laminate one of them or something, so you wouldn't even have to reuse the paper, and you could play it as many times as you wanted. So that's why I picked what I did, and I kind of cheated, a little bit.
So when your snow machine goes over a bump, Jen, and all of them fall off but one, which is the one that stays on your snow machine?
Oh gosh, I knew that was coming, and I think Dominion, because it's got the most options for like playing again and again and again and again. And so I think if I could only take one with me, I think it'd be Dominion.
Yep. I don't know. I don't think you're cheating that much. Because, we may only be able to take 5, and I'm the husband, so I'm looking at the 5 games I get to take.
That's funny, because that answers my next question, Ray, which was, if you and Jennie combine your list, what are the 5 that make it? And do any of yours make it in? Now I know.
I think, well, we'll get to mine, but I think there's some overlap there that might just make that answer.
I would let him keep Tiny Epic Dinosaurs for Rococo.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of the huge thing there, because a deck builder is a deck builder. Now that doesn't mean they're, it doesn't mean they're the same. And I would prefer, legendary, just because we played Dominion for a lot, but there's the amount that you could take for either of them is epic levels. If we could only take 5 though, Dominion would work because there's a lot of stuff there. Guildhall and Guildhall Job Fair is a little card game that came in the world's ginormousest box. And we put it down to that single deck box down there. It says Elder Dragon. That's both of them. A lot of replayability. I think I might fight for that one to stay with us there, because it works really well. You get to choose your I believe it's 5 different jobs, and between those two starters, you've got 10 different jobs, so you can get a number of combinations, and you're just trying to get sets of those jobs to be able to buy victory points. Works really well. I've got 2 Cult of the New. I'm going to run with this one's definitely my fault, but the Tiny Epic Dinosaurs is an excellent worker placement. Like, I was not impressed with Tiny Epic Quest, so I kind of was sitting back, and then I heard good things about mechs. And then Dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are, we can get Andrew to play anything dinosaur. If it's got a dinosaur, my youngest son will play it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. And it turned out to be an excellent worker placement game, and it's also a tiny epic box. If we went by volume, I would have an entirely different list, because we just grabbed the Eagle Griffin bookshelf games and all the tiny epics that we got, and we're golden. Hokkaido was my kind of surprise one to me, but thinking about it, it is a city building, map building game. You're using cards, and you're trying to you've got a mountain range down basically the center of your city, and you're trying to get equivalent on both sides, and you're playing cards and overlapping those cards. We haven't even touched the surface on what this can offer, and that would work. And it's also a tiny box. Adventure, Tactics, Domains, Tower. I finally found a dungeon crawl that does what I wanted all the other dungeon crawls to do for character enhancement, level ups. This one, basically what you've got is it's a lengthy deck builder, because you play cards out of your hand, and that is your action. You get to do 2 of them per turn. There's other things you can do, but your basic actions are based off your cards. After you complete a quest, you finish the session, which are only about 45 minutes to an hour. You then may get a level up. If your character gets a level up, you either go up a level in the class you are, or you add a class, or you add an elite class, and then you add cards to your deck. So your improvements come to the cards to your deck, and then you get more hit points and you get more things. By the way, Race hurt very badly, very, very badly. That was a very quick scenario. That was a 15-minute scenario. But that one has a branching storyline as well. So I debated between this and Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, because they both have branching campaigns. You don't necessarily get to all of them because of the setup. Both of them sets up really quickly. But this one has the artwork that allows my wife to want to play with me, as opposed to the more gritty other artwork. It's very Disney-esque comparatively. So all of a sudden, I win a little bit by going, look, it's not gruesome with the flaming hand of a creature attached to the lady's arm. It's okay. It's pretty. So those are mine, and I think we all went for replayability, something that feels epic, something that's co-op, and then something that's fun, that's quick. So.
Hey Ray, no getting out of it. If you only could take one, what would it be?
Okay, that's easy. I'd go with the Marvel. the Marvel Legendary. Again, kind of the same thing with Dominion. You can play, there's going to be so many different combinations you can play that all of a sudden you can have over a year. If you played it once a year and only had some expansions, you would still never really play the same game twice. So
Okay, I gotta say that I'm shocked that there aren't more dice games in your list, Ray.
I like the dice, but the dice don't like me. Honestly, I don't know. This is what I would take, because I also think they all have something that I could show somebody and give some wow factor instead of the Yahtzee mechanic, but go, hey, what you like superheroes? Yeah, I love the Marvel movies. Well, come here, let's show you this. Or okay, I want to play cards and kind of build a city. All right, I here's Hokkaido, and what we're looking for is to do this. So you're just overlapping your cards to build your city. I guess I wanted to go with something a bit different that I could show. And the other alternative was, my first list when it popped into my head was all dice games, and it fit into like a tiny container. But no, that is definitely not my norm. There is one dice game, because Adventure Tactics uses dice, but every dice is different with different probabilities. So if you're attacking with the black dice, you've got 1, 2, and then 5 and 6 are the only faces. So you're either doing 5 to 6 damage, or you're doing 1 to 2. There's no 3 or 4, and it was interesting. So good question, and no, I didn't get out of it, Jenny. I answered the question. So,
also, we have to congratulate you for having the smallest volume, maybe?
Yeah, indeed.
I win!
Victory for Raymond. Although, I don't know if we have to figure in the combined volume of Raymond and Jenny, because they're going together.
No, we only get 5. We only get 5, and we lose because I lose. That's really what it is.
Well, or do you win because Jen wins? What's the...
Yes. Actually, she would swap out. Her volume would go down, taking out Rococo and putting in Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. So I think we'd be okay there.
But I also think Andy might be able to hack it a bit, because Icecool is hollow. You can put Elder Sign inside there and the expansions maybe, right?
Easily. Yeah, Elder Sign and the expansions for sure. Especially if you only have one expansion. If you get into 3 or 4 expansions, then you start getting, because everyone has these little cardboard rectangular tiles that are your challenges. So once you start getting a big pile of those, that does start to take up some space. And I just think Icecool, I'm a nerd for great game design. Icecool is brilliant game design with the nesting boxes. Like, it's just an amazing use of space. And it was just I'd never seen anything like it when I first put it together on a table and played it. I was like, what is this? And what mad genius thought of this combination of cardboard and plastic? It's just brilliant. But yeah, no, I definitely could fit Elder Sign into other things. And the other thing too, I thought was, well, boy, I don't know if I still went too big with Pandemic. Like, I could have gone smaller with, with Dutch Blitz. Dutch Blitz is 2 decks of cards, the size of 2 decks of cards. Zombie Dice. Zombie Dice is what, 8 dice, 9 dice. That's the whole game.
Yeah.
But like, if you want a co-op, we actually just took Pandemic Hot Zone to the cabin because it's a tiny little box,
right?
And you still kind of get that co-op Pandemic feel. Or even something like one of the tin games, Forbidden Island or Forbidden Desert, is much smaller. Because I was like, I really want a co-op. I want something that I feel like a group can play. And that then too, if you're bringing in new people, the other people who are living in your community with you, and you want to introduce them, a co-op's a really nice way to introduce them, because there's not that stress of, oh, you're going to beat me up because it's my first time. Well, no, I've got to work. You've got to work together.
Right. No, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to fight against you. Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I did think about, and if it was in my collection and not in yours, I might have gone with the Pandemic dice game because I really love that game and it plays very well and packs down very small. That's Pandemic the Cure, right? Is that the
Yep.
thinking of?
Pandemic the Cure.
Yeah, that's a fantastic game and a small form factor.
Well, and I think an offshoot of this would be, okay, you have this much space. How many games can you get in and what games are you taking?
Right.
Because then you really, how can I pack this?
Well, that was the thing is I did my list and I was like, oh, well, I can mail stuff out there and get the box. And having lived in the bush, like if it fits in a box, you can get it out there. It's just a matter of how much money do you want to spend to get it there, and what freight company do you have to talk to, because if they can fit a snow machine out there and Argos and cars and all sorts of stuff, they can figure out how to get a box of Pandemic out there.
Yeah.
Different proposition.
One that
I think
played, oh, sorry, go, Jen.
Oh, I was going to say some of it, I think, too, is ideas. If you're going somewhere for a year and you knew you were just coming back, I think some of that also why you only take 5 is, you're bringing them back. Like some of it's also, like, I think, a realistic thing, too, is people who get deployed. Okay, you're getting deployed for 6 months, 9 months, whatever. What do you take with you? And one of the reasons we ship board games is a lot of them, I know, leave them there for the next group. And, you're kind of, contributing to that. But, deck of cards, I've talked to people, and, deck of cards is what most people want because I can play how many games with the deck of cards?
Right.
And it requires...
I think game fatigue is a real thing in that scenario too. And that being in a year in one place with just that thing, like, and that was one of the reasons I went with Pandemic Legacy. The exact opposite reason that you went with the Scythe expansion that has the campaign and the board don't permanently change in the Scythe playthrough. Like the permanent change to the board appeals to me in Pandemic, and really, I know we played all the way through Pandemic Season 0 and Season 1, and I don't really have any desire to go back and play either of those seasons again because I really enjoyed the experience of playing through it as a complete game and walking away from it. And I think that there's value in that idea that there is an end to a game when you're done playing it. Like I know when I was out in the village, a game that we played all the time was Cranium, which is just a mashup of like 5 or 6 different fantastic trivia and charades and all these classic games all in one box. And Cranium's a phenomenal game. I played, I don't even know how many hours of Cranium in the 5 years that I was out there. And you know how many times I played it since the 5 years I was out there? Not once, not one time since then. And I love the game. If someone put it on the table at one of our game nights, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm all in because it's fun. But I'd also, if I'm looking at the pile of games that I want to bring, that's not one I put on the list because I played it so much. I don't want to play it anymore. And some games like cribbage or chess, I can play that forever. Like that, I don't get sick of that. Yeah, I just traded out for another one of those, or Hive even. I love Hive as well for that reason. It's more, and there's some of those classic pure information card game type things. Catan has almost infinite replayability for me as well. But you can get burned out on it, just like anything else.
Well, for us, like not only deck cards, but deck pinochle cards. We play pinochle in college. Oh my gosh, we played so much pinochle. We played so much 3-handed pinochle that I know that you can lose by getting to negative 150 because that's usually how all our games ended. So, 3-handed pinochle is not. It's one of those experiences I've played so much of, and I'm not sure I'd recommend it to anyone.
Well, I've never played pinochle, so that's. I once was hanging out with my dad, and he and his good friend played cribbage with a pinochle deck, and they had ridiculous scores. Like they realized they were using the wrong deck when at one point I think they had between them 6 of the same card. I don't know exactly how the pinochle deck works, but I think they had 6 aces between the two of them when they were doing their pegging and counting, and they were like, "What is going on?" They just grabbed the wrong deck off the shelf.
If you have a double deck, you're going to have 4 of each in each suit. So you have 4 aces of hearts, 4 aces of. You have a single deck of pinochle, you'll have 2, 2, and 2. So I just bought really nice, fancy, like Ordum, with lots of shipping problems, and I don't. shipping problems to here, but I have a nice new fancy deck of pinochle cards.
That matters, man. I got a new. I just kickstarted a new set of Steve Minty cards for our new crib cards because I love really nice cards. It matters. Components matter.
And that's why I'm bringing the metal mechs, even though it's gonna weigh down, significantly. I think I definitely lose the weight game there.
Yeah, I think not only cubic volume, but we should have done weight because I picked up that Dominion box. And I'm like, oh, that weighs a lot. Because I know a lot of times you do have weight restrictions as well as space restrictions.
Yeah,
You
I think
got that
weight.
50-pound. You're fine.
Weight is a more, having lived out in rural Alaska where it was only plain in or out. Weight is a more significant restriction than space typically. Because that's what you pay for is weight. You don't pay for space.
Yeah, so talking about like decks and things like that, one that almost made my list was Agricola because it has so many expansion decks. Because then the expansions are really small, right? And it could fit into the box. But I thought, well, sure, the cards and everything, but after playing it so many times, is a new deck really gonna refresh it that much? Maybe. I just felt that Scythe would be a better option. So like the big game, I thought of that. But that was one that almost made my list.
There were a couple. For example, I really debated about Lords of Waterdeep because the app is pretty awful. But the expansions all fit in the main box, and with the number of different buildings that you end up getting, and the game tends to go, especially if you've got the expansion, it tends to go different ways, different times. But it's a big box. Like it's for what it is. It's a huge box, and then there's tiny epic dinosaurs. I'm like, yep. So maybe we'll try that volume. What awesomeness could you fit in a cube one time?
Well, and I think there needs to be a weight restriction too. Are we
Right.
doing weight restriction or are we just doing volume restriction? Because that's a totally different question.
I think so.
Because you know how I pack boxes, Ray. You've moved with me. And my mother and grandmother and I pack boxes of books, and Ray still hasn't forgiven us for what we packed in Grand Forks.
Oh, that hurt.
Did you put rocks in the boxes with the books?
We ripped through a Rubbermaid tub. I picked it up, and the weight ripped out the bottom.
Oof.
Well, my grandmother is an expert
packing
duct
boxes.
paper.
Packing boxes have weight restrictions as well. They just don't.
Yeah, because my mom and grandma have the duct tape down, so they're packing and they're wrapping every box in duct tape. Well, they're like, "What's your neighbor's cooking? Something smells funny." Well, then they realize it's a duct tape. Do you know after a while, duct tape actually has a smell to it? If you use enough of it. This is things you learn when you pack an entire box, and your mother and grandmother decide that everything must be completely coated in duct tape because they put so many hardcover books, like math books.
Yeah,
I might own a few math books.
A couple. Yeah, I don't know. I thought about the Arkham Horror series of games as well, and Eldritch Horror, and I think I didn't. And those are some of my favorite games, but I didn't go with those because I already had two kind of darker horror style games on my list. I didn't want to go, and that's accessible to not everybody. Like not everybody loves that, and that's okay. I do, but not everybody does. I also wanted to think if I'm doing just a pickup game with random people that I've met out there in a small community, that's not always the easiest sell. Just to be like, here, check out. Have you ever heard of H.P. Lovecraft? Yeah, he was racist, but don't worry about it. It's better now. The people are doing good things with his legacy, and the universe is really cool. So, yeah, come hang out with me and try out this thing that's probably And we all know people who don't do horror films or read horror books or any of that stuff. And I never want to make, if someone wants to come and play one of those games, then I'm all for it. But I never want to try to push a friend or someone who I want to be a friend or a gaming member of my gaming group into a game that the theme makes them uncomfortable or the art makes them uncomfortable or any of that. Because the whole point of playing games is for me is to have fun with your friends and to meet new people and have a fun experience.
I agree. And, you know, honestly, when I'm picking, and we've talked about this even with like, you know, what do you introduce people to game? I think about theme all the time because, you know, and again, I'm one of those people, I look at a horror theme and go, I don't want to play that. And I've had some really good experiences with you guys playing like Arkham Horror or Eldritch Horror, but I would on my own never pick those games up. I look at the theme and go, I don't want to. Honestly, Ray had to shove me into playing Lords of Waterdeep because of theme.
Right.
And so I think that it is, and I think you do need to consider if you're thinking, okay, I want to be able to introduce this entire community I'm going to be living with for this period of time, or you know, to do it out the other experience. You know, I'm going to be deployed. I don't know who else is going to be there. I want people to join I want people to game with. I want some stuff that I've got some options on.
Yeah, and I think some of those like heavier historicals that you like, Jen, are things that I don't tend to buy. Those don't tend to be in my collection. But every time I've played them or watched someone play them, watch you guys play them at your house, I've enjoyed them. They look like great games, but it's not something I would have leaned towards. So I think it's a benefit of a game group is to have some of that variety within it, right?
Yeah, well, and the same reason I didn't pack any of those big, heavy historicals, because a lot of people are going to look at that and go, I don't want to spend a day in medieval Russia. I'm like, but it's so cool in medieval Russia. Plus, that box was huge. But, you know, I know that that's going to be an off-putting for someone. Well, Ray and I just played Lincoln last night, and, you know, a lot of people are going to look at that and go, I don't want to play some Civil War game, you know, or memoir, any of those, you know.
Right, memoir, and then the other one that I thought of, what's the giant World War II box, the huge one?
Oh, Axis and Allies?
Yeah, Axis and Allies. And I know people who play like that's a weekend long game or like multiple weekends long for some of those versions of that game. And people who like those, like it's kind of like 40K. Like you don't meet a 40K player who's just casually into 40K. Like they're fanatics. It's like someone who plays Magic every Friday night. They don't know just a little bit about Magic. They spend a lot of time thinking about Magic and playing it. And so some of those games are you know, kind of scare people away at the door if that's not their jam, you know?
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming, and we're going to try and keep doing these, and we're going to try and rotate a few other people in here too. And that was interesting. Thanks for the idea, William, and we're going to go from there. So I'm going to stop recording now, everybody. Thanks for watching, and talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.